call is connected.
Right. Oh, no, you're mute anyway, Matthew, because it's global, so good morning, good lunch, good afternoon, good evening. Yeah. I need my laptop by my nameplate, please. Off. Good morning, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. I know that you're all over the world. Thank you for our first virtual council meeting press conference. And don't you all look great, those that I can see. Although Mike Rowbottom, you might want to move back slightly from your camera. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Seb to do some introductory remarks. Can you hear me? Are we still on mute here?
Yes, it's still on mute. You have to unmute.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Can everyone hear? I can see Mike Rowbottom, so if you can hear us, put thumbs up, please. Thank you. Hi, you all look great. Welcome to our first virtual council press conference. We're going to follow the usual format. I'm going to hand over to Seb just to talk you through what decisions have been made, and then we'll roll from there. And I believe you've all got instructions on how to ask the questions. If anybody wants to just have on screen the speakers, in the top right hand corner of your machine it says gallery view or speaker view. If you change to speaker view, you'll get Seb, and then when Rune Anderson speaks, you'll get Rune. Okay, Seb, all yours.
Jackie, thank you, and thank you very much for making the time and taking the trouble to be with us this evening. And I'm seeing a lot of very familiar faces on the screen, so thank you. And we've had a busy 2 days, and if I just pick up on an observation Jackie made, that it's a couple of days that made history, of course, because this was our very first virtual council meeting. Our council meeting in March was a bit hybrid because some were able to make it and others weren't, but this is the first time that we have all joined virtually. And if I may just reflect momentarily, because there are many of you on this call today that were also close and personal friends of Sven Arne Hansen. So we did also reflect at the beginning of our council meeting that this was the first council meeting that we were missing our cherished colleague. I thought it would be helpful before I got on to the decisions that we made today, just simply to recap over the last few months, and certainly those months since we joined together as a council in March. It does seem a very different world that we were meeting in. And we've covered a lot of ground. And I thought it was just worth, in a way, I reminded our council during the last couple of days in my opening remarks yesterday, but I think it's just worth a quick romp across that landscape. Since March, we have agreed, as you know, revised competition dates, and that's been a complicated jigsaw, and it's a jigsaw that we've had to recreate not just over 1 or even 2 years, but it has a profound impact even 4 and 5 years hence. We suspended the qualification system for the games with the change to the road events. We felt that those road events and those athletes, both race walk and marathon, where many of those opportunities are becoming thinner by the day to qualify. And I'm delighted that the council supported that. John, our CEO, who joins me today, also drove through with the headquarter staff and through our executive board the strategic plan that really gives it's classically a matrix. It sends magnitude and direction for our sport for the next 4 years, and the strategic plan covers 20 to 23, and that's been signed off and now up and running. We've also used that time, and again, let me pay tribute to our teams at headquarters, because I think all organisations that are going to come out into the post-pandemic world in slightly better shape than they went in, and certainly future-proofed, are those organisations that, amongst the decision-fueled landscape that they've been working in, have also set some time aside to understand what the sport or their organisation, in our case the sporting organisation, may look like in a year or two's time. And so we have started work streams across a whole range of activities, including our a new grant funding model. We created the Athletes Welfare Fund, which I'm delighted the last count has been responsible for funding 197 athletes across 50, I think about 58 federations. And I know that that has made a real difference to those athletes that were seriously in need. We provided really some time for some of them and their families the basic needs. We have really kick-started our e-learning programs and processes. We've also, as you know, in our strategic plan, wanted to define ourselves going forward as a very clear campaigning organisation. We've made more than tentative steps in two key areas. One is the right of every child to have access to sport going into the post-pandemic world, and the campaign that we are now into in a big way, which of course is what we describe as every breath, which is our commitment to clean air and for participating athletes at every level to know that that is also the dialogue, the global dialogue conversation that we want to join. And across our internal contents, we've been doing everything we possibly can to keep our sport front and centre with Ultimate Garden Challenges and some of the most innovative stuff that I've seen in any federations. And our latest offering was Fitter with Friends, which was the opportunity really to build on the fact that pretty much every research organisation is reporting that more people are spending more time exercising, particularly during a lockdown. And we don't want to lose that global pattern, and we do think our sport is uniquely placed to help push that forward. And I think it's quite unusual for me to be able to say during lockdown that we've also brought three partners to the table. Two commercial, the first Pinsent Mason, which has joined us as our official legal partner, legal services partner, which is hugely important for us. We live in a litigious world, and that can be very budget relieving. There is another commercial partner that we haven't announced yet, but that is due shortly. And I was particularly pleased that we were able to announce our partnership with Park Run, a concept that really has now got a global footprint. It is an extraordinary organisation. And that really sits at the heart of that element of our strategic plan, dealing with driving participation. We've also now had our 4 full commission meetings and reports from those commissions, together with their 4-year strategic plan and the terms of reference to our council, which was signed off today. Let me just conclude before I get on to the decisions that were made today with just a couple of reflections on where I think our sport sits in the world currently. And we have to be clear, we are still in very tricky waters. It isn't inconceivable that we could end up for a second year in a row with some very badly dented competition ambitions. And that wouldn't just have a financial impact on our sport, it would also have the impact that goes way beyond that. And I suppose it's really simply about eyeballs on our sport. You know, we are a global sport. No sport really indefinitely can sit outside for very long of that kind of engagement. And we need to look at this, and I actually will be taking the lead in a piece of work that we will start as of today, really, and that is looking at, I hope not at a scenario where for a second year we are not having competitions, and we need to address that. We need to address it in the way that maybe we are having to put on something that sort of captures the imagination globally. It may be with other sports. These are all the things that we need to look at. It may be that we have to drive this type of competition through our area associations, and that's an important concept for us. And I think that wherever we look, we probably recognise that what I would call our domestic product, our national championships, our ability to stage events within our own borders, is probably going to be more important than ever. And it would, if we got it right, be the right kind of aggregation that would allow you in the media and our communications and competition teams to sort of aggregate a global presence. As I said, I hope that isn't the case, but it is, I think, worthy of reflection and certainly some planning going forward. We are also in a delicate geopolitical world. I am left to reflect, as I said in the council the other day, that it's a long time since I've heard, in this case, American senators from across the political divide talking actually about the boycott of a competition. We know that the most influential leaders in the world do appear to be in large part in conflict with themselves and across their own global organizations. And that too is of a concern because comments, remarks made have big impacts on diplomacy, they have big impacts on the money markets, and they have big impacts on consumer confidence. And all three have an impact on sport. And so that is also something that we will be looking at and addressing going forward. And I am, in conclusion, left to reflect really that I do genuinely think our sport has gained in stature over this period. It's not the way we would have chosen to have done it. The technology that is now available to us that brings us in a much more connected way to consultation, to decisions, where we really can. Our member federation information sessions are a classically good example of that. And I think it's also been good because we have consistently and continue to make the tough decisions. And those tough decisions are what we do. And those decisions are better made by us because we're actually better than anybody else when we come to making those decisions about our sport. And I am also left to reflect that it has been in large part the profile of the athletes that have really helped us here. And maybe it's because they have temporarily left the treadmill of competition and draining travel and Herculean training sessions that they have had the opportunity to engage in a more personable way with our fans and with our audiences. And I'm really grateful that they have helped keep us centre stage, front and centre as a global organisation. And I genuinely believe that we're leaving lockdown a great deal stronger than we went into that. I guess we're all left to reflect on occasions that you only truly miss something when it's not there. I think we have all missed athletics, and it's a timely reminder about what matters in our lives, and athletics does. And we have missed the development day-to-day of our athletes. We have missed them in competition. We have missed the other infrastructural and ecosystem issues that keep us engaged. And I think that we can look forward to, again, an uncertain world, but certainly one where our sport, I think, can function in a more systemic and probably in a more coordinated way. Let me just focus immediately on the decisions that we took today, certainly over the last 2 days, and those were the dates for our World Athletics Series events. We announced those yesterday, and they did include a request from Australia to postpone the World Cross Country Championships next year in Bathurst in New South Wales. I know in our conversations with them and with all the municipal authorities and certainly Athletics Australia that they are fully committed to that only being a postponement, and we will work towards getting that back into the programme as soon as we can. We also agreed to pursue cross-country as a discipline for Paris in 2024, and that has a personal angle for me, because as an 11-year-old, the very first athletics club I joined back in 1969-70, I was introduced to my then club president, who was in his 70s. His name was Joe Williams. He was the president of Hallamshire Harriers, and he actually competed in the last cross-country event to take place in an Olympic venue, which was also a relay. So it's the mixed relay that we are proposing, and in simple terms, that's 4 athletes, 2 male, 2 female, each running 2.5K, and they do it twice in order to meet the endurance criteria. The other, of course, big decision that was taken today was off the back of the recommendation and report to us from the task force. And at this point, I'm going to immediately throw to Rune Andersen, the chair of the independent task force, who is with us online. And I know he will take you through the deliberations of the task force and the recommendations. So over to you, Rune.
Okay, sorry, Renee, you're muted. We will unmute you. Somebody unmute. Can you unmute?
I thought I heard him.
Okay, Renee, we can't unmute you because can you unmute yourself? Well done, go for it.
Got it now, I think.
Good, thank goodness for that, Rune.
Thank you. So on behalf of the Russia Task Force, I reported to Council today that the new RUSAF regime had failed to deliver on the requirements imposed by Council in the decision in March 2020. RUSAF did not pay the 5 million fine for its anti-doping breach or the 1.3 million in costs, either by the 1st July deadline or at all. RUSAF identified members of a new RUSAF reinstatement commission, but did not call one meeting of that commission. And it did not produce a meaningful plan for the consideration of the task force and the council, setting out what it thinks needs to be done to bring about a real and lasting change in culture in Russian athletics. Instead, the new RUSAF president, Mr. Yushchenko, resigned on 13 July 2020. This morning, however, the Russian Minister of Sport, Oleg Matytsin, gave an unconditional commitment that the outstanding $6.3 million will be paid in full by no later than 15th August 2020. He has also indicated his intention to support the reinstatement process moving forward. On the task force recommendation, the Council therefore decided to call a meeting of Congress so that member federations can vote on the expulsion of RUSAF from membership of World Athletics. But to suspend that decision provided that the 6.3 million is paid by 15th of August. A draft reinstatement plan is provided by 31st August. A final reinstatement plan is agreed by 30th September to be put before Council for approval. And thereafter, proper progress is made in implementing that plan. If those conditions are met, Russian athletes will be permitted to apply to compete as authorized neutral athletes in the international competitions taking place in 2020. The cap of 10 ANAs for World Athletics Series events and the Olympic Games that Council imposed in March will apply, although the only such event in 2020 is the World Athletics Half Marathon Championships in Gdynia in October. The cap will be reviewed by the Council not before December 2020 based on the progress made by RUSAF in implementing the reinstatement plan. If any of the conditions is not met, the decision to call a meeting of Congress to consider expulsion of RUSAF will come into immediate effect, and no further ANA participation will be permitted pending Congress decision. For the sake of clean Russian athletes, the task force hopes that the payment will come through as promised and that the other conditions are being met. If so, the task force stands ready to work with the members of the RUSAF Reinstatement Commission, including representatives of the Ministry of Sport, to bring about meaningful reforms in Russian athletics. Thank you, President. That was my introductory remarks.
Rune, thank you very much indeed. Jackie.
Okay, so I think the rules of engagement were made clear. We are happy to take any questions. I'm assuming you will start with Russia, but please, if you could put your questions in the chat in English, that would be great. And then we'll just roll through them. But obviously, we are happy to take questions on any other topic you would like. Well, within our sport, clearly.
Always comforting. Good. Well, thank you very much. It's been really good.
So those we can see on the screen, if anyone is actually typing a question, can you just give us a thumbs up and we'll wait. Otherwise we'll stop. Okay, thanks. Okay. Nick, can I have an answer to that? Okay.
Yes. Mark Vantuak is signaling.
I've got Okay, so I'll start. Okay, I'm not quite sure of Kermit's question, but I'll maybe it just needs to be clearer. Oh, quite. So quite. Okay, we'll go to Brian. If a federation is expelled, how does that country get back into the World Athletics? How long would it take? Seb?
It's a lengthy process, and we have to be clear about that. And we've been very, very clear with RUSAF and the Russian ministry that for a country to be expelled, it would have to be a recommendation from the Council off the back, in our case, of the task force recommendation today. That would be then expedited to a Congress. The next Congress, as we know, is 2021. And the journey back from that point is a very difficult one for obvious reasons.
Okay, then from Anton, I know a lot of athletes who are making some real sacrifices and also taking risks to make sure they can compete, even though they're in the middle of a pandemic. Is this an opening to reflect on the issue of shoe companies being too big of a source of income to athletes? Shouldn't they be able to secure their income in other ways? What other openings can we open up for athletes to be able to, for them to be able to make money?
Look, we have to be realistic about this. The shoe companies are a very, very important source of income to the athletes. They are big investors in our sport. Collectively, they're probably the biggest sector that we have, and we should never forget that. But we have actually spent quite a lot of time during lockdown reflecting, particularly given the challenged nature that most athletes have confronted, not just financially, but the costs of not being in training, not being able to ply their trade anywhere else. Look, one of the absolute reasons that sat behind the creation of the Continental Tour was to create more opportunities for athletes to compete, and compete outside the Diamond League. And the sadness of this year was I was actually at the very first of the Continental Tour meetings in Sydney, the one that went straight from there to New Zealand for the very first time. As a meeting attracted television. It was moving in a really strong and powerful way, and that too would have helped athletes in that journey. So there are lots of things that the Athletes Commission have been discussing and looking at. Our competition teams have been looking at here as well, and we need to, the reality of it is, and it sits at the heart of our strategic plan, we need to bring more commercial partners to the table. And the more we can do, the more we can actually directly support programs around the athletes. 90% of our funding is effectively directed towards the athletes, and that's the way it should be. But of course, if we increase the pie, then we have more to redistribute back into the sport.
Thanks, Seb. I'm just going to quickly answer the World Under-20 Championships. We announced that yesterday. You'll find the dates on our website. It is 1 week after the Tokyo Olympic Games next year, so those dates are there. This is a question for Rune from James Ellingworth. Can you be more specific about the Russian Sports Ministry commitment? Is this money confirmed to be coming from the Russian government funds?
We cannot confirm where the money comes from. We have received confirmation in writing from the minister that the money will be made available by 15th of August, and we have not any information on where the money will come from.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going back to another question that is from Gigi Press for you, Seb. What kind of infection prevention measures would be possibly required for athletics if the Tokyo Olympic Games would be held within or whilst the COVID-19 problem continues?
Well, that would be, I'm no expert. I would rely very heavily on the right medical advice. We do have an extremely strong team here headed by Stéphane Bermond, who has actually led the way on a particular piece of work which is now being looked at and implemented across a range of sports, which is about outbreak prevention, particularly in participation events. So that would, of course, have to be, we have always been guided by medical and scientific advice, and also the advice at a local level, because we never want to be at variance with public health authority diktat, and nor would we ever want to put athletes into harm's way, or the communities that we will eventually, we hope, be welcoming back into our stadiums. So yes, it's a delicate process, but we will always be led by, well, not led, because our sport does have to make some decisions that sometimes will sit outside some of those confines, but in large part, of course, we will always take advice from those specialists in that area.
Thanks, Seb. So this is from Alex Capstick, last minute reprieve. How disappointed are you that Russia has so far failed to comply with what has been asked, and how confident are you they will meet the deadline? Seb, do you want to take
Yes, I'm happy to take that. Look, this has been a tortuous process. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's been anything other than frustrating, both for the task force and for my council colleagues. We set out on the journey knowing that we were coming from a long way behind, that you don't remedy this situation overnight, that the history here has been a sad and a deeply ingrained one, and I wished that we'd made quicker progress in some cases than in others. That hasn't always been helped by the fact that in so many cases we have been a lone voice as a sport in this area, and we have had to plough the field ourselves on most occasions. But I am pleased that we have made a bit of a breakthrough. It's a start, but it's only a start. But at least it does allow us now to recognise that the sanction that was given by the Council in March has been recognised, that the exchange of letters is clearly identifying the fragilities that they have been struggling with. And I think that gave my council today some comfort. And at least we're now in a position to continue the reinstatement process, having at least had a very clear indication that they have accepted the seriousness and the severity of the situation. But the proof of the pudding, of course, will be in the reinstatement plan that we have from them, and that has to be detailed, and that will be assessed, and the task force will have the responsibility of helping drive that. We're not sitting outside this process. We want to be a part of it. We will have two people that will be attached to that process as well, that are independent. And then the task force has the opportunity, once we are in receipt of that report by August the 31st, we then have another month to make sure that it is absolutely a credible report. And only then will we feel that we have the green light to take it to the next stage.
Okay, I know we've got a few more questions on Russia, but I just want to cover off under 20s and cross country. So there's two questions from Mark L'Equipe. With cross country, do we know where cross country will take place in Paris? And if cross country is back in Paris, he would like to know if we must withdraw another event, for example, the 10,000 metres or the 4x4 mixed relay. John, would you like to?
Yeah, very happy to. So look, we're right at the start of the journey here in discussions with the IOC around the inclusion of cross country. We think it will bring, another exciting discipline to the Olympics and extend the reach and profile of our great sport. But in terms of the venue, there are a number of options. Paris, outside of Paris, there may well be some events, for example, taking place in Chamonix. So there are options which the IOC and the LOC are looking at. Obviously, the decision in terms of the programme for Paris 2024 is actually not decided until the end of the year anyway. So the first hurdle is to ensure the inclusion of cross-country into the 2024 and beyond Olympic programme. And then it's a matter of actually working through what the venue will be. But in terms of how that will be included and its impact on the wider track and field programme, that's not been discussed yet. That'll be for the next few months.
Thank you. And then Elias asked a question. Under the circumstances and given the timelines between now and September 26, does World Athletics feel it is viable or realistic to host the Continental Tour leg in Nairobi almost next month? 26. Seb, do you want to?
Yeah, well, we hope so. We really hope so. But, this is a moving landscape all the time. I have no great predictive insights. I'm not sure my opinion is any greater than anybody else's at the moment. But I know that the Kenyan Federation and the municipality of Nairobi are full steam ahead with plans. I speak regularly to Jackson Tuwe, the president of the Kenyan Track and Field Federation. And it's I really genuinely hope we're in a position to be able to celebrate athletics in such an extraordinary venue.
Okay, thank you. Just one on the Carifta Games, Seb.
My favourite.
Have there been any discussions with NACAC regarding the 2021 Carifta Games?
Look, it would be improper of me to speak on behalf of NACAC. I am a fully paid up member of the Carifta Games fan club. I went to my first Carifta Games in 2014, 2015. I've not missed one since then. It's an extraordinary event. I was very, very saddened that the pandemic prevented Bermuda from staging this year's edition. It's an annual edition, and it really has been the most extraordinary route and bridgehead for pretty much every Caribbean-based athlete that has made it to the very highest levels of our sport. It's their journey. It's been the soundtrack of their youth, and it took them to some of the highest levels, including, of course, Usain Bolt. So I'm not familiar or across any discussions that the NACAC or the Carifta Council have taken. But I know there has to be an ambition to get it back into the schedule as quickly as possible, because it matters so much to those island communities.
Okay, and then James Ellingworth again, a question for Seb. Some of Russia's top athletes with neutral status who are very critical of Rusev have said they'll consider switching allegiance to other countries. Would World Athletics welcome this or help by shortening the waiting period given the current situation?
Look, there are many considerations other than just current country of residence that is reviewed for anyone choosing to transfer their allegiance to move to a different country or a different federation, including countries you have competed for before moving to live in a new country. So I think that is something that at the moment it sort of rests there. I sincerely hope it doesn't come to that, because I want to make sure that this reinstatement process takes its right course.
Okay, and we have Hiroki, question to you, Seb, about the Tokyo Olympics next summer. As president of the International Federation for Athletics, what areas are you willing to compromise in order to simplify the Games? As a former Olympian, what things are you against compromising on?
Well, I would add another hat, of course, because I was organisational president for the Games in London, so I know that this is a challenge. The one area I will never compromise on is athlete welfare. They are the most important client group that we have, and it is very important that whatever we do, and I absolutely recognise the cost-cutting nature and measures that need to be implemented. This has been an expensive process. I can't imagine, as president of the organising committee in London, what I would have had to have dealt with had somebody walked into my office in March or April and said, by the way, it's not happening in 2012. I have considerable sympathy for the Tokyo organising committee and all those that have been involved in that ecosystem. So, look, there have to be some sensible compromises, of course, but the compromise that I don't think anybody ever wants to see is a compromise around athlete welfare or their ability to compete at the highest level and most effectively.
Okay, NRK for you, Seb. There have been several whereabouts failure cases lately involving some of the most successful athletes. I think we know all their names. One of them, Nasser, has been quoted saying that this is quite normal. How do you think these cases affect the reputation of the sport? And do you feel that track and field athletes are taking the whereabouts issue seriously enough?
Well, you won't be particularly surprised when I say that it isn't a normal situation. Actually, it's a very abnormal situation to miss 3 tests. For as long as most of our practicing athletes, and for at least 2 generations before them, those athletes have lived in an environment where whereabouts is not an a la carte menu, it's not a nice to have, it is an absolutely central plank of our anti-doping processes. And they have to take them seriously. The vast majority of athletes do. And actually, my words are probably not nearly as effective as the words of other athletes who have passed judgment on the importance of whereabouts. Just recently, in various media reports, I think they sum it up probably more articulately than I can today.
Okay, and then it looks like the last question is from Elias, who would like your thoughts on your entry into the IOC as an IOC member as it pertains to the sport. And he'd also like to say congratulations.
Elias, thank you very much. Look, I'm very pleased to be representing my sport in the Olympic movement. We are the #1 Olympic sport, and I think it's important that the sport has a voice within the movement, and I look forward to discharging those duties. And I also look forward to working with the Olympic movement. There's never been a more important time to make sure that community and elite-based sport flourish and thrive, particularly as we move into the post-pandemic world, and that's why our campaign to provide access to more young people through sport and ideally through athletics sits absolutely at the heart of our campaigns.
Okay, so we have no more questions. So if someone is currently writing a question, put your thumbs up. Otherwise, thank you everybody. Obviously, I think Nicole has already mentioned that the Russia announcement is already on our website. We'll follow this up also with a press release about cross-country. So thank you all for joining us, and we are available on our normal phones if you have any other questions.
Oh, I'm not.
The comms team, obviously.
There is a hand up, Jackie.
Has someone got a hand? I can't see a hand up. Ah. Can we use clips from this meeting on our media platforms? Yes, you can. We're going to send it to you guys, and you can use as many clips as you like.
Just get my good side.
Yeah, good luck with that. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
It's on, turn it off.
Well done, Jackie. Thank you, Rooney.
Thank you, Renee.